Before the Abyss knew his name, Brujan stood as the proud guardian of the gates of Elysium, radiant and noble, his heart beat with an empathy rare among the heavenly host. High above the mortal realm he would gaze down upon Midgard, longing not for conquest but to walk among the fragile souls he protected, to experience their warmth, their joy, and the fleeting beauty of immortal existence. Brujan held no secret closer than his love for Serendipity, a celestial muse of unmatched grace. In the quiet hours after the bloody sieges against dark forces, he opened his heart to her, sharing his softest dream, a future where they might step beyond the golden gates together and wander Midgard hand in hand. Yet Serendipity's love for Brujan was possessive. Shadowed by a desperate fear, she believed the mortal realm would steal his affection from her, forever. Night after night, she sang sweet love ballads to him that secretly wove a heavy magic. Her songs praised his divine perfection, and with every lullaby Brujan's celestial armor hardened, growing excessively golden, massive, and imposing. A physical gilded prison forged from her possessive pride. Chapter 1. The Weight of Gold. The gates of Elysium towered over the void, twin monoliths of star-forged silver that reflected the swirling nebula beyond. For 3 millennia, Brujan had stood at their threshold, his spear array of pure dawn light. It rested lightly in his grip, but lately the weight on his shoulders had grown nearly unbearable. It was not the burden of his duty that weighed on him. Brujan was a champion of the heavenly host. He had turned back crawling tides of the abyss without faltering. The heaviness was far more intimate, a slow, encroaching stiffness that settled into his joints with every passing evening. Beyond the gates, far below the shimmering ethereal tides, lay Midgard. Brujan leaned against the balcony's balustrade, his gaze tracing the blue and green marble of the mortal realm. He could see the faint glimmers of fires lit in the village hearths, the quick, erratic motion of the living things whose time was short and precious. To walk among them, he thought, his chest aching with a quiet, persistent longing. To feel the rain that leaves a chill, to hear laughter that eventually ends. "You are looking down again, my love." The voice was like spun glass, melodic and pure. Serendipity stepped from the misty archway, her flowing white garments drifting around her like clouds. A shimmering lute of ethereal birch nested in the crook of her arm. Brujan turned, standard warmth returning to his eyes. Despite the rigid ache in his posture, "Serendipity, I did not hear you approach." "You never do when your heart is down there," she said softly. Though a flicker of shadow crossed her porcelain face, she glided closer, resting a slender hand against the breastplate of his armor. She frowned slightly as her fingers brushed the golden surface. It felt colder than usual, denser, thicker. The filigree along his sternum had crept upward since yesterday, casting sharp, imposing angles against his neck. "They are so fragile, Brujan," Serendipity murmured, looking towards the mortal sphere with a gentle disgust that she took care to veil. "A single winter snaps them. A fever turns them to ash. Why do you pine for a garden that rots?" "Because it blooms," Brujan answered softly. He reached out to take her hand, but his heavy golden gauntleted fingers excuse me, moved awkwardly, lacking their old finesse. "Its fleeting nature is what makes it radiant, Serendipity. I dream of stepping through those gates, not as a warrior, not as a warden, but simply as a soul, and I want you beside me." Serendipity's smile tightened. A familiar panic, cold and suffocating, flared within her chest. He wants to leave, her inner voice whispered. Sharp as a dagger, he wants to abandon the divine perfection of this place. To abandon me for breath and dust. You belong here, she whispered, her voice lilted with a sudden desperate affection. You are our bulwark, my bulwark. Come, sit with me by the northern courtyard. Let me sing away the fatigue of the siege. Brujan hesitated, looking back at the twinkling fires of Midgard, but the devotion in Serendipity's eyes was absolute. He nodded slowly with the heavy metal of his gorget scraping against his shoulder blades with a dull clink. They moved to the courtyard, where the white roses bloomed beneath an unmoving moon. Brujan sank down into a marble bench, his armor creaking under its immense burgeoning mass. He closed his eyes, letting his head rest against the stone wall. Serendipity sat beside him and plucked the first string. The melody began as a gentle tide. She sang of eternal skies, of untarnished silver, and of Brujan's boundless grandeur. Her voice wove through the quiet air, rich and ancient, binding incantations disguised as praise. Rest now, Golden King. She sang, her voice trembling with possessive fervor. Unyielding tower, immortal stone, never to break, never to roam. As the magic took hold, Brujan felt a deep intoxicating warmth spread through his limbs. The tiredness in his mind receded, replaced by a strange, numbing tranquility. He did not feel the thin ribbons of celestial light wrapping around his torso. He did not feel his breastplate expanding, hardening, layering itself in impenetrable sheets of gilded divine steel. With every note praising his unmoving perfection, Serendipity's spell tightened the cage. The sharp, functional plates of a soldier's armor fused into a massive, imposing shell, stately, beautiful, and utterly paralyzing. Brujan let out a slow, heavy breath, his eyes half closed. Your song, it makes me feel invincible, Serendipity. You are invincible, my champion, she whispered, leaning down to press her lips to the cold gold above his heart. Tears of fierce relief rising in her eyes. And here you will stay forever. Beneath the gorgeous glittering shell, Brujan's heart beat with a quiet growing terror, trapped inside a golden fortress of the love he trusted most. The battle for Elysium's barrens were not fought in the warm glow of the golden gates, but out in the jagged ash wastes, where the heavens crumbled into the abyss. Brujan stood knee-deep in a dark, iron-rich mud, his golden armor gleaming against the gloom like a dying star. In his right hand, he held his spear, a weapon forged from a beam of pure dawn. In his left, he swung a massive double-handed celestial claymore, its broad blade etched with runes that hummed with unyielding authority. A horde of demonkin surged across the ash, their twisted horns and obsidian claws tearing through the fog. Brujan did not flinch. With a single sweeping arc of his claymore, he clove through the vanguard, sending black blood splashing across his gilded greaves. He thrust his spear forward, the light burning through bone and hide, searing three beasts all at once. For her, he thought, every brutal stroke driven by the memory of Serendipity's voice, to prove I am her unyielding tower, to bring pride to her heart. In the heat of the slaughter, a shadow darted through the twilight, not the broad, jagged silhouette of a demon, but a swift, delicate creature of glass-like wings and shimmering dust. It was a child of the Fey realm, a displaced forest spirit, driven from its grove by the abyss's creep. Terrified, the Fae fled towards the light of Brujan's spear, seeking refuge in the shadows of the heavenly host. Brujan turned, his golden visor reflecting the small, trembling form. The Fae raised its hands, crying out in a melodic, ancient tongue, pleading for mercy and for safe passage beyond the Golden Gate. To a mortal, it would have been a heart-wrenching sight. A fragile, innocent life begging for protection. But Brujan's mind was wrapped in the intoxicating warmth of Serendipity's magic, his empathy skewed by the malevolent arrogance that festered in the heart of Elysium. He did not see a victim. He saw impurity. He saw a lesser chaotic wildling threatening the pristine perfection of the realm that he was sworn to keep immaculate. Nothing untamed shall touch the gates. Brujan rumbled, his voice hollow and echoing from behind his gilded faceplate. It is the divine will. The Fae barely had time to gasp before Brujan brought the claymore down. The broad, radiant blade cut through the delicate spirit instantly, scattering his luminous form into a shower of fading sparks. There was no hesitation in his arm, no tremor of regret in his heart. He felt only a cold, righteous satisfaction and the belief that every life ended in the service to Elysium was an act of holy devotion, a gift of glory to bring back to Serendipity. He swung his claymore out to clear the glittering residue from the steel, his gaze locking onto the next wave of demonkin surging over the ridge. Behind his eyes, the subtle terror of his golden imprisonment remained buried beneath layers of a divine zeal. He was the right hand of heaven, a monster wrapped in light, utterly convinced of his own righteousness as he raised his weapons to slay once more. The journey back led Brujan through the jagged ash hills that sloped away from the barrens. Long before reaching Sanctheim and the broken cities of Zarelheim and Niflheim, these outer districts were a Babylonian-style market city bustling with the hidden ones, the bastards of angelic whim. Half-bloods and displaced Fae kept close in a sick, patronizing dichotomy of celestial benevolence. As Brujan's massive golden tread echoed through the cobblestone market of Niflheim, a commotion broke the tense silence. A celestial overseer draped in silver mail raised a heavy gauntlet to strike a small trembling child of the cross origin. The boy possessed an iridescent skin of the Fae and the faint glowing mark of angelic blood on his brow. Impure pest, the overseer spat, his voice laced with arrogant malice. Know your place. Before the hand could fall, Brujan stepped forward. Without a word, he struck the overseer across the chest with his heavy golden arm. The force of the backhand sent the arrogant official crashing through a wooden stall, leaving him sprawling in the dust, breathless and terrified. The market fell into a suffocating quiet for a fleeting moment. For a fleeting moment, the suffocating fog of Serendipity's magic parted beneath the sheer weight of Brujan's innate honor. He looked down at the child, who cowered with wide, hopeful eyes. What is your name, little one? Brujan asked, his voice unexpectedly deep and gentle. Kaelin, the boy whispered, trembling, yet mesmerized by the towering golden night. Brujan unbuckled his massive celestial claymore. The broad blade, etched with ancient runes, hummed with a resonant vibration. Gently, Brujan placed the heavy hilt into Kaelin's small hands. As the boy's fingers wrapped around the leather, the weapon grew weightless, reacting to a dormant power within him. In that instant, as the ancient runes flared against the boy's palm, a faint phantom whisper echoed softly from the steel into Kaelin's mind, a single mysterious sound. Raga. Kalen blinked, looking up in awe. Brusian knelt slightly with golden armor creaking. "Keep it hidden, Kalen," he murmured softly, a spark of his true protective nature breaking through the gilded prison. "A day will come when you must lift the weight of these realms." As Brusian stood and turned back towards the path to Sanctime, Serendipity's spell crept back into his mind, dulling the warmth into a distant haze. Brusian's heavy golden footsteps faded into the ambient roar of the market, and the blinding sheen of his armor shrinking into the looming shadow of the grand archway that led towards the sanctum. In the wake of his departure, the market slowly breathed again. Whispers broke out among the stalls like rustling leaves. "Kalen!" A sharp, panicked voice sliced through the murmurs. A woman pushed through the parting crowd, her pale blue skin glistening like frost. Beneath dim market lanterns and her vibrant fiery red hair tumbling over her shoulders in wild waves, curved dark horns swept gracefully back from her brow. She seized Kalen by the shoulders, her sharp tiefling eyes darting frantically from the heavy cloth bundle tucked under the boy's arm to the path that Brusian had taken. "What were you thinking?" she scolded, her tone trembling with equal parts anger and terrifying relief. "A warden of the upper host. You dare stand in the path of golden steel? They would crush you into the cobblestones and call it mercy, child. Do you have any idea how close you came to being erased?" Kalen clutched the hidden, weightless hum of the celestial claymore tighter against his chest, his eyes shining. "He stopped the overseer, stepmother. He gave me this." "It doesn't matter," she hissed, though her hands gently checked his arms and face for any sign of harm. "We are the hidden ones. We survive by staying in the shadows of their grand vision, not by drawing the eyes of their champions. Leave the boy be, Vespera." A tall, striking figure stepped out from the shade of the arched alcove. Kalen's father stood head and shoulders above above the surrounding crowd. Once his feathers had been a magnificent blinding mantle of pure white and spun gold, but the years in the fringes of Niflheim had muted them to a softer, dustier hue. Still, his posture carried the unmistakable dignity of a noble avian lineage. He rested a long, talon-tipped hand on Vespera's shoulder, easing her back. His sharp golden eyes locked onto his son. He had stood close enough to hear the resonant thunder of Brusian's voice and the Golden Knight's parting promise. Vespera turned on him, her tail flicking in frustration. "Oh, you're going to encourage this, are you? Look at him, Cassian. He could have died." Cassian tried desperately to keep his expression stern, angling his beak downwards and smoothing the ruffled crest of his feathers at his neck. He tried to hide the sudden electric swell of pride that lit up in his chest, a feeling so intense it made his old faded plumage want to bristle and swell. And continue with Cassian's pride. 4 years, Cassian had looked at his boy, a quiet child born of mixed forbidden blood, and felt a silent aching anxiety about what place the boy could ever hold in a world that treated them as celestial shame. But hearing the greatest guardian of Elysium look upon his son not with disgust, but with prophetic reverence, had answered every unspoken fear, every silent prayer that he had ever buried in his heart. His son. Thank you, Lisa, for the follow. I'll give you a follow back while I'm being generous. Oh. There we go. Well, as requested. Your stepmother is right to worry, Kalen, Cassian said, his voice deep and melodic, though he couldn't entirely mask the faint, glowing warmth in his golden eyes. The light of Sanctum is dangerous. He knelt down, his large feathered hand wrapping over Kalen's small hands and the heavy, unseen weapon they held. He looked to his son's eyes, offering a soft, knowing nod that spoke louder than any words. But some sparks, Cassian whispered softly, ensuring only the three of them could hear, are meant to catch fire. Come, let us get home before the overseers return. The grand gates loomed overhead like twin mountains of silver and glass, their surfaces catching the shimmering immortal light of the upper realm. Brujan paused beneath the sweeping archway. The heavy weight of his golden armor clanked softly against the polished, white marble floor, echoing in a vast silence that separated Niflheim from the highest sanctuaries of Elysium. For a fleeting second, he looked back down the winding cobblestones towards the market. The memory of Kalen's wide, hopeful eyes flashed in his mind. The weightless hum of the celestial claymore in the boy's hands had felt right. Midgard, his mind whispered. Slipping past the golden fog that constantly lulled his thoughts, he pictured the mortal realm again. He imagined the green forests, untouched by divine design, rivers that carved in unpredictable paths through rough stone, and mud that dried under warm mortal sun. Down there, life was messy, but brief. It possessed a raw, vibrant pulse that Elysium could never replicate. He wondered what it would feel like to stand on a simple dirt road. Thank you for the heart, Melissa. On a simple dirt road without the crushing responsibility of his mantle. To watch a mortal sunset fade into a true dark night, rather than this endless, unmoving twilight. But as he turned back towards Sanctheim, the sheer staggering opulence of the realm shattered his daydream. The true gates of Elysium opened before him, revealing the inner heart of the city. Towers of solid pearl stretched up towards nebula of violet and gold. Waterfalls of liquid light cascaded silently from the floating islands, pooling into crystal basins below. The very air tasted of ozone, honey, and old magic. It was a grandeur so absolute, so overwhelmingly perfect, that it suffocated any lingering thought of the lesser realms. Midgard felt small, fragile, and impossibly distant compared to the timeless majesty surrounding him. Brujan began his long walk down the Avenue of Dawn. The streets were paved with seamless slabs of gold, buffed to a mirror shine that reflected the swirling cosmos above. Here, nature did not grow from dirt. It responded to a sheer perfection of the realm. From the mortar beneath the golden stones, lush vines sprouted, twisting gracefully along the curb. Bright, oversized strawberries dusted with faint starlight, and peaches with skin like sun-warmed velvet. Thank you, Zombie Heart, for the Team Heart Me. Brujan reached down with a heavy, golden-clad hand. With surprising care, his massive fingers plucked a peach from a vine that had materialized beside his boots. He lifted his visor just enough to bite the fruit. It tasted of pure summer and sweet nectar, melting instantly on his tongue without leaving a single seed behind. A cluster of strawberries sprang up in its place, pulsing with a soft ambient glow. It was a realm of infinite abundance, where even the stones provided luxury without effort. Yet, as the sweet flavour lingered, Brujan felt the familiar subtle stiffness creeping back into his joints. The opulence around him was beautiful, but it was a perfection that demanded an absolute stillness, a paradise, built to keep its guardians content, complacent, and forever bound to its gilded streets. He let the fruit skin dissolve into light in his hand, lowered his visor and continued his slow, heavy march towards the courtyard where serendipity waited. The heavy gates of Sanctheim parted with a low hum, allowing Brujan to step into the quiet sanctuary of their private courtyard. The chaotic roar of Niflheim faded, replaced by the ethereal, timeless silence of the upper realm. Serendipity stood waiting beneath the glowing arbor of the starlight roses. The moment her violet eyes met his golden visor, her breath caught. She didn't wait for him to cross the marble floor. She moved towards him with breathtaking grace. Her white silks flowing like liquid moonlight. "Brujan," she breathed, her voice a desperate trembling song of relief. She reached up, her delicate pale fingers tracing the cold, heavy line of his gilded gorget before pressing against his faceplate. Brujan knelt before her, the tremendous weight of his golden armor echoing against the stone, reducing his immense, terrifying stature so that he was eye to eye with her. With a soft click, he released the seal of his helmet, lifting it away to reveal his face, weary, rugged, and intensely focused entirely on her. Serendipity cupped his jawline, her thumb caressing the sharp line of his cheekbone. The contrast was striking, his bronze battle-tested skin against her luminous ethereal softness. "You return to me," she whispered, her eyes shining with an overwhelming devotion. "Every moment you are away, the sky feels empty. My heart forgets how to beat." Brujan leaned into her touch, his eyes closing as a deep sigh parted his lips. The memory of the market the lingering warmth of the boy Kaelin, and the echo of the battlefield all began to recede, washed away by the sheer intensity of her presence. He wrapped his massive, gauntleted armor around her waist, pulling her flush against his chest plate, holding her as if she were the only real thing in existence. "I will always return to you," Brujan murmured, his voice low and laced with a fierce, quiet passion. "You are my sanctuary." Later, as the quiet hours of night settled gently over Sanctime, the heavy tension of the realm seemed to ease. In the calm that followed, the suffocating fog of possessiveness and spellwork faded into the background for a brief golden interlude. The agendas of heaven and the quiet anxieties of the future had vanished entirely. What remained was simply the two of them, stripped of the pretense and armor. They sat together on a low marble divan overlooking the starlight gardens. A small, elegant feast lay between them. On a tray of spun glass, flaky celestial pastries, dark honeyed wine, and fresh figs. Ripe peaches gathered from the courtyard vines. Serendipity reclined against him, her head resting gently in the crook of his shoulder. Brujan sitting in the simple tunic robes with his heavy armor set aside for the night. It had receded beneath his skin. Offered her a slice of fig. She took it with a soft laugh, her violet eyes crinkling at the corners with genuine, unforced warmth. There was no enchanted songs floating through the air, no silent spells reinforcing his golden prison, and no underlying fear driving her touch. In this quiet space, Serendipity wasn't trying to keep him trapped, and Brujan wasn't trying to escape. They traded quiet jokes, reminisced about the early days of the upper realm before the wars grew so heavy, and shared a simple meal like two souls bound not by magic, but by a deep, genuine affection, born over millennia. For a few precious hours beneath the soft glow of the starlight roses, they knew peace. I can have a break before we start chapter